Hey guys, what's up and welcome back, and today we're going to talk about a various range of different black and white films. Now, color always seems to be out of stock these days, or the prices just seem to keep going up and up, so why don't we all just shoot a bit more black and white film? It's how I fell in love with film photography. The first time I shot black and white and developed it, it really solidified my love for black and white film, for film photography in general. So today we're going to cover a bunch of different black and white films. Now, to preface this video, first, if there is a film stock that you've heard of that we don't cover in this video, that is because I'm only talking about films that I have a lot of experience with. So all of these films, I've shot a minimum of 5 rolls. In some cases, it's up to 60, 70, 80 rolls of those different film stocks. But I don't like to talk about things that I don't have any experience with. So if there's a film on this list that you like that I didn't talk about, that's because I may have only shot 1 or 2 rolls of that film stock. Second, guys, all the images you're going to see were developed and scanned at home by me. Now, they were using either the Ilford's Ilford 3 developer or Ilford's Ilford HC developer. So your results may vary if your lab uses, if you get your lab to develop your film and they use a different set of chemicals, or you yourself use a different set of chemicals, results may vary. And finally, when we're talking about prices, we are talking about 35mm prices, not 120. The 120 medium format film prices are almost identical, if not extremely similar, and all the results you're going to see in this video are all 35mm results, all shot by me, because that's what people mostly shoot these days. So we're just going to stick with 35 and not confuse anybody who may be new to film photography here. So in no particular order, let's just start the list, and we're going to start from the lowest speed and work our way up. So first up, we have Ilford's Pan F. Now this is a slow speed, high contrast, 35mm black and white film. Roughly it's going to cost you about $14.25 Australian per roll. Now this film has exceptionally fine grain. It is perfect for portraits. The film manages to resolve extremely fine details, and you can almost not see the grain unless you're using a grade magnifier or extreme pixel peeping. It is that smooth of a film. Now, while this film delivers absolutely amazing results, it is only a 50 speed film, so it is considered quite slow. And once sort of the sun goes down or you step into shade or a dark area, you're going to be, maxing out your aperture of your lens, and you're going to be on sort of slower shutter speeds like 1/30th, 1/60th a second. So it's definitely a film to work either in the studio with good artificial light, or you're working with a lot of available light for this film. But amazing results, beautiful, sexy film, one of my favorites. Definitely have a crack. Next, we're going to be talking about Ilford's Delta 100, and this is going to roughly cost you about 15 Australian dollars per roll. Now this is considered a medium speed film. It uses Ilford's core shell technology, which is part of their more professional lines of films. And using this technology, Ilford claims that they deliver you superb image quality and maximum sharpness. And I definitely concur. This is what I would call a medium to low contrast film. It's definitely going to give you more of a flatter image, a lot more grays within your grey tones within your image, but it definitely has quite a large dynamic range, and it can resolve a lot of detail from the shadows and highlights at the same time while still being an extremely sharp film. It's great for portraits, it's great for landscapes. Like I said, it is a flatter film, but you can always add a bit more contrast in post or using multigrade filters in the darkroom if you're making prints. But it definitely is an extremely sharp film, great tonal range. Here are some samples. Next up is possibly my favorite of all time, and that is Ilford's FP4, and this is roughly going to cost you about $12.25 per roll. Ilford says this is an all-purpose, fine-grain, medium contrast film suitable for a wide range of subjects. It does have reasonably fine grain, and it does have quite a high level of sharpness to this film. It's definitely the black and white film I have shot the most with because it has a very robust exposure latitude. Now, what does that mean? It means you can pull and push this film with ease. Me personally, I used to be a HP5 man until one day it was out of stock everywhere, and all I could get was this Ilford FP4. Now, it is only 125 speed film, so I decided to push it 2 stops to 400, and the results absolutely blew my mind. I have shot, I couldn't even tell you how many, I can't even keep track of how many rolls of this film I have shot, pushed to 400. The sharpness still maintained. Now, usually when you push film, you get a lot more grain in the image. For some reason, pushing this 2 stops, the grain does not increase very much, and you still maintain an extremely sharp image, except the blacks. You get a bit more contrast, and you get a very, very deep tonality or deep range of blacks when you push this film. It is my favorite of all time. I highly recommend it to everyone, and make sure you push it 2 stops. It is magic at 400. Next up is the internet's favorite, Ilford HP5. It's going to roughly cost you about the same as FP4 at about $12.25 per roll. Now, this is an all-purpose, high-speed black and white film with medium contrast and reasonable to high sharpness. We could argue on that. But it does give you great results in a wide variety of lighting situations. Action, sports, documentary, photojournalist work. This film is one of those all-purpose do-it-all type films, and it does also have a very, very robust exposure latitude. Lots of people, as I'm sure you've heard, love to push this film to push to 800, push to 1600, and it still handles lighting situations very well, and the grain doesn't become too overpronounced when you push it either. It's definitely a favorite. Now, it's not the sharpest film in the world. You're not shooting HP5 to get the sharpest image possible, but it just gives a very, very pleasant look, great contrast, very reasonably good sharpness, but definitely a fan favorite do-it-all film. But again, the main reason you shoot HP5 is for the versatility that this film offers. Next, we're on to possibly the most iconic of all time, and that is Kodak Triax 400. Now, Kodak's line of black and white films are a little bit more expensive than Ilford's. Triax is going to run you about $15.50 to $16 per roll. Now, Triax is very similar to HP5 in a lot of ways. It's very versatile, it's very robust, great exposure latitude, can be pushed and pulled. But I would definitely say it has a lot more contrast to HP5. Triax definitely has its own look. Now, the TriX formula has actually been unchanged since 1954. It's probably one of the longest running consistent formula films you're going to find. It is considered by some to be the greatest black and white film of all time. It has a very good level of sharpness, definitely gives you rich, punchier blacks and a bit more contrast than HP5 would, but TriX definitely looks like TriX. I think when you see TriX, you can't mistake it for anything else. It has its own unique look, and a lot of the most famous street photographers, photojournalists, reportage, war photographers, a lot of those really famous images you've seen throughout history were most likely shot on Kodak Triax. It's always been a fan favorite among professionals because it just gets the job done. Next up is Ilford's Delta 400, which is going to run you about $15 per roll. Now this is another one in Ilford's Pro line using their core shell crystal technology. It is a high-speed film but with maximum sharpness. It has amazing detail for a 400 speed film without having that much grain present. Now this film has a great dynamic range, a lot more so than Ilford HP5, their other 400 speed film. You're definitely going to see a lot more detail in your shadows and highlight areas with this film, but it is extremely sharp. You get some amazing detail out of this film. It again, much like Delta 100, has more of a flatter profile, a lot more gray in the image as opposed to really hard, punchy, contrasty blacks, but that's the nature of the film. Having a lot more dynamic range is not going to have as much contrast to it, but it has a very impressive tonal range, extremely sharp film, a bit more expensive than Ilford's other offerings, but it is a very, very high quality film. Last on the list, guys, is Kodak TMax 400, which is going to run you about $16.50 per roll. Now, this is often very much compared to Ilford's Delta 400. On the box, Kodak even claim world's sharpest 400 speed film. Now, they use something called their T-grain emulsion, which is their version of what Ilford does to give you maximum sharpness and dynamic range with this film. It is, again, a very, very sharp 400 speed film. It has an amazing exposure latitude. I would say, I'm sure somebody will argue with me, but I would say the exposure latitude from TMax compared to Delta is a little bit better, but I would say TMax gives you a even more of a flatter image than the Delta range does. I would call it a lower contrast film. It definitely has its own unique look, very, very sharp images, great for sort of portrait work and documentary work. You can always add more contrast in post instead of having it baked in, so it's not too bad. But again, very, very versatile film, a bit more expensive, but you're paying more for that more professional grade film. So I hope you guys enjoyed that and you enjoyed all my sample images that I shot myself, and it gave you a wide variety of subjects to see what those different films can do, and maybe it helped you decide which one is best for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, guys. Tell me which is your favorite black and white film. As always, guys, happy shooting, and I'll see you in the next episode.